For everyone who's joining us on the call, as you know, Lalo is a fellow CDMer alum of the MDM program, and we're super grateful that he's going to anchor sort of the alumni speaker series for this term. We will continue with the speaker series into the next term and touch on some other speaker expertise subject matter, of which Neil and Tom will help kind of connect on making all that magic happen. But for the purpose of today and for everyone that's here on the call, I want to take full advantage of the time that we have ahead of us. And again, I just want to send out an appreciation to everybody who's on the call with us, especially for those of you that have made it out to 95, if not 100% of these talks. It's a huge part of the MDM experience to build your network. In our alumni network, we couldn't be prouder. I've shared a bit about Lalo. I mean, some behind the scenes, I know he's been a Star Wars fan before he even left the MDM program. So him connecting up with ILM, I think, was a big moment for him and for me. I've got a poster in my office that he gave me when he was working on the Mandalorian 1, which is kind of got a nice place. It's still waiting to be framed, but very proud. Again, one of the other secrets of the CDM, the building behind me, it looks like the Sandcrawler from Star Wars. Larry, we can co-own it. We'll share it. That's the... But, so the MDM kind of has, we'll say, a lot of interest in all things Star Wars, or at least for a lot of us of a certain age or interest. But Lalo is now working at ILM, but he's not just working on Star Wars. I kind of use that as the lead-in. He's doing some very important work for Industrial Light and Magic, which is known for mainly known around the Star Wars franchise, but they do so much more work. The session today will be recorded, so you have a chance to revisit this. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end. But what I really want to do is say, Lalo's a great guy, even though he's a Dallas Cowboys fan, which I'll forgive him on. And he's got a PlayStation 5 before me, which I'm still waiting on. I'm jealous on many fronts, but I do want to share my deep appreciation and share the mic to Lalo right now, and kicking it off with a thank you so much, Lalo, for joining us. Super proud of you. Super excited to see what you've been up to. And let's see what you got.
Awesome. Thanks, Dennis. Hello, everybody. Let me just quickly share my screen right here. There's the one. Do you see it? Yes. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Dennis. Thank you to the CDM. I will always be grateful to the CDM because it was one of the best experiences of my life. It basically changed my life. And of course, I was looking to change my life. It was not only a matter of starting a master's. It was, for me, moving from Mexico City and changing my location and changing even myself through the CDM journey. But let me start from the beginning. Today, I'm going to talk to you about my CDM journey, which I call a road of self-learning and discoveries, or basically how I have been managing to survive without real tacos this long. But before we start, let me ask you to do something. Take a minute to close your eyes and go back in time 15 years ago. Think about this. What were you doing 15 years ago? Where were you? What were your dreams? What were your objectives? Where did you see yourself in 15 years? It's important to look back sometimes, to place ourselves in the beginning. And let me tell you a little bit about myself and where was I 15 years ago. Well, 15 years ago, I'm gonna give up my age here, but I was graduating from university, from an undergrad in communications. And then I was ready to take on the world. I was ready to start a career. in production. I was focusing on audiovisual production, TV, film, radio, a lot of stuff. And I was ready. But I said at the beginning that this is a journey about discoveries. And one of the first things I discovered is that I was thrown out to the world without really knowing what to expect. And yeah, I discovered that I didn't have a laid out plan in the long term. I just kind of knew that I wanted to start working on something related to my industry, to anything related to audiovisual production. So I started as a video editor. Yeah, pretty cool, right? Being creative, putting stories together for TV, short films. But also, I've been always interested in audio. I love music, and I love doing stuff with sounds. So I did a little bit of sound recording as well. And on that regard, I also did a little bit of sound design for TV shows, some spots, TV spots back in Mexico City. And well, tied to this, I did a little bit of radio production. Not only on the side of production, but I also was a host. I like talking to people. I like connecting to people. So I did that for a while. And also a little bit of voice acting here and there. And then I ended up in marketing. And in the end, doing some brand management. So as you can see, a little bit on the same line, communications, but I tried literally almost everything. And while all this was happening, well, I love film, you know? And I remember that I used to be sitting on the theater watching amazing movies with a lot of visual effects, with amazing effects. And I used to wonder, well, maybe one day I will be a part of that industry. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know what I have to do. Sometimes I even went to the websites from studios, international studios, and checked some of the job offerings, job positions and descriptions. And yeah, sometimes I was like, okay, well, I still have some road to walk. But maybe one day. More about like daydreaming. Now, let's fast forward to 2016. 4 years ago, what was happening in the world? Well, if we all remember, the world was wondering if Mr. Donald Trump was going to be president of the United States, or if we were going to have the first woman president in the United States. We all know the result of that. Fortunately, that changed this year. Also, that year, unfortunately, one of the biggest icons in pop music and rock passed away, Mr. David Bowie. And I'm not comparing me with them, of course. It's just like to set context. But I was also moving from Mexico City to Vancouver to start my CDM journey. And it was a time where I was very excited. I was very much looking forward to change my life and to discover what was following up for the next chunk of my life. And that brings us to talk about my CDM's experience, which I like to divide in 3 stages. The first one, it's excitement. Probably if you remember your first day at the CDM, what were you feeling? All that expectation, seeing new faces from all around the world. Who's gonna be my friend? Who am I gonna have a lot in common? Oh, look at the faculty. Who will be like the grumpy teacher? Who will be the funny teacher? A lot of excitement, a lot of stuff to yet be discovered. And soon I started discovering throughout time that it was going to be like an intense program. A lot of information, a lot of stuff that sometimes I, to be honest, didn't know why we were having it. It didn't make sense at the moment. But we're already here, right? So let's keep going. And then we get more and more information. And then all of a sudden, head hurts. It's a lot of stuff to go through. And then you go thrown into your first team projects. And then I started to discover that I was very confused because I had come from a background of production, audiovisual production. And for us, we are brought as project managers to the CDM. But I started discovering that I didn't know clearly what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. I started seeing that software developers, well, they had like a very specific task, right? Dedicating to execute coding. Designers, artists, well, do the designs, work on the art. But then if you are in a project where there's already another project manager, which happened to me on my first project there, I was, well, I'm gonna be like following up this project manager, but then I didn't have a clear idea of what I was supposed to do. So that brings us to the second stage, confusion. I was very, very much confused around this time 4 years ago. And looking back, I sometimes was frustrated, stressed out, because I was in a new country, far away from home, and yeah, I was very much confused. I didn't know what was going to follow up. But then I started doing something that the CDM taught me and that I still do nowadays. And that is asking questions. I started asking questions. I started making a plan. I started booking meetings with every single member of faculty, different times, different days. And I started asking them questions and expressing my concerns. And of course, they didn't tell me what I was supposed to do because that was 100% mine. But every one of them gave me their advice that came from 10 years of experience in the CDM, plus all of their previous experience on their own industries. And by doing that, I started figuring out that probably I knew what I wanted to do. And one of the first things that came to my mind was that, well, all that the CDM was teaching me or us in the C11 cohort resonated a lot with me. All the Scrum methodologies, Agile, the Sprint book. I don't know, do they still read the Sprint book at the beginning? Well, we had to, and it was a fantastic one. And all of that resonated in me. So I started like figuring out, okay. Then I remember one member of faculty gave me an advice of going to see job postings, descriptions, and seeing what appeals to me. And then like not seeing the title, but seeing the description first. And whatever appealed to me, well, maybe that's what, like the road I needed to take. And I started seeing that what interested me was the Scrum Master position or some coordinating positions, right? So then I started to walk right into the third stage of my CDM experience, which is Epiphany. I started to have clarity. I started to have an understanding of what I wanted to learn and what I wanted to focus on. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of information on term number 1. There's a lot of roles. Like alone in the Scrum methodology, we have 3 different roles: the product owner, the Scrum master, you know, and the person, like the people that execute. Who do I want it to be? So that's when I started realizing, okay, I like working with teams, closely with them. I like facilitating meetings. I like setting up environments so that teams can be successful. I think being a Scrum Master is for me. And that's what I focused most of my learning experience in the CDM. First, I had an industry project with Microsoft for location-based app called Vango, where we had to go and explore the public art system in Vancouver and build an app to enhance this experience and also to help people be aware of the existence of this public art circuit. And I started this project being a Scrum Master. And we had the luck to have Alumni with us as a coach, like an agile coach. And I was immediately stuck to him and asking, again, all the questions and asking for all the advice, asking for resources. And yeah, like I was focused and dedicated on learning everything I could for him for the time that I was going to be at the CDM. And then I went to I was not a project manager on that one. We had a project manager, but now I found what I like, as opposed to the first term that we had a project manager and I didn't know what to do. On the second term, we had a project manager, but I already knew that I wanted to be a Scrum Master. And that's why I executed what I executed on term number 2. Term number 3, I just went all in and I was Scrum Master / project manager. And we worked with Blackbird Interactive on a video game. I'm also a video game nerd. Yeah, like Dennis said, I have a PS5, so yeah, I'm a video game nerd. So it was exciting as well, right? And I just dedicated to keep learning more about Scrum Master and trying new methodologies and experimenting a lot, but also improving my skills as a producer / project manager with scheduling and milestones and all of that stuff. And yeah, that was my journey through the CDM on the year that we have to go through the projects. And what happened after that? Well, after that, if we remember 15 years ago, I was graduating from university and I was pushed out to the world, find a job, figure it out, man. Well, pretty much same thing here. Term number, 4? Yes, number 4, co-op. Go out to the real world, find a job or a co-op or an internship and figure it out. The difference between me after the CDM and me 15 years ago is that now I knew what I had to do. So I started doing a lot of research. I didn't have a clear idea of what industry I wanted to go to. I was between film, visual effects, tech, and video games. So I started applying to a lot of companies from all the sides. And I started also, again, asking a lot of questions. Networking events, trying to meet people from HR, from like recruiters, producers, career fairs, asking all the questions. And the main question I asked always was, hey, I'm interested in the road of production. Where do I start? And that's how I started getting answers. And based on that, I had like probably 3 or 4 prototypes of my resume. Each one of those was directed to a different industry, just highlighting my previous experience that I thought would be more appealing for each one of those industries. And well, at the same time, whenever I sent my resume to HR and I got a rejection letter or whatnot, I always replied asking for feedback on my cover letter and on my resume. And I have to be honest, not all of them replied, but at least the 2 or 3 that replied gave me valuable feedback. And let me just tell you that thanks to that, I was able to land a job in Industrial Light and Magic. And the story behind this, let me just talk to you about it really quick. The first time I approached ILM was in January 2017 at a career fair. And I went to the stand of ILM and I approached one of the persons there, a recruiter, and I asked them, hey, so my name is Eduardo and I'm interested in working for you guys. But I don't have previous experience in the visual effects industry. I do have experience in production. So I just want to know where to start. And what I received was an immediate rejection. Oh, sorry, if you don't have visual effects experience, we need people with visual effects experience because there's no entry-level positions. And I was like, okay, well, fair enough. And I moved on. My mindset was not about, okay, well, I will never be in ILM. It was more, it's not the time. I need to do something first. The second time I approached ILM was in a networking event. I met someone there. I asked the same questions and I got the same answer. And I was like, perfect. And the third time was when I was in the co-op term. And I said to myself, well, you know what? Third time is a charm. Let's see what happens. And by networking, I knew that one of my friends from the CDM, her best friend worked as a production manager at ILM. So I just asked my friend, hey, can you send my cover letter and resume to your friend and ask for a little bit of feedback and to see if if the person I'm sending it to in HR is the right person. And the reply I got from my friend's friend was a lot of feedback, the right person to send it to, and also an offer to go get a coffee. Which, of course, I took. I took the offering. I met her for coffee. And, well, again, I'm going to sound repetitive. I asked a lot of questions. I asked every single question I had in my mind about ILM, about the visual effects industry, and about her as well. What is that you enjoy the most about being a production manager? How did you start in the industry? What are your expectations about production assistant in order to become a coordinator and eventually a production manager? And we had a very nice chat with a coffee for 45 minutes. And in the end, we said goodbye. I sent my resume, and probably a month later, I just checked in with her again and told her, hey, I haven't heard anything back. Did you know if the position for production assistant has been covered? And she was like, no, I don't think so. But yeah, let me check. And the only thing she did, she told me later, now she's a very good friend of mine. She told me later on that she went with the production recruiter, tapped on his shoulder and said, hey, take a look at that resume. And that's it. The next day I got an interview. And the next day after the interview, I got a job offer. And I was very, very happy about this because ILM, well, as you can see, I'm a Star Wars fan. And ILM, of course, is a studio that works on movies like Star Wars. Let me talk a little bit about ILM real quick, just to contextualize. They have worked on movies like Terminator 2, early 90s, and it just happens to be one movie where ILM put the first full CG character, main character, for the majority of feature film. Then they worked on a movie like Jurassic Park. Again, same thing. First time that main character, in this case, the dinosaurs, is full CG for the majority of the movie. For Jurassic Park, they combined CG and practical effects. And just a little anecdote that I find interesting in Jurassic Park, they didn't have the plan to have CG dinosaurs. At the beginning, it was only going to be animatronics, like real, well, not real, of course, but like robot puppets. But then Steven Spielberg was looking at it and was like, oh, you know what? I don't like how they move. I'm not convinced. So ILM, a group of artists from ILM, they said, okay, as a side project, let us try something. Like we just did Terminator 2, full CG characters there. Let us try this technology for this. So what they did was created some dinosaur assets, some dinosaur animation cycles. And why animation cycles, like running and walking cycles? Because precisely Steven Spielberg was not happy with how the dinosaurs looked like when they were walking. And then when they presented this to Spielberg, he was amazed, happy, and gave green light. And thanks to that, today we have a lot of CG characters on screen. And most recently, ILM has been involved on the Avengers movies, I don't know, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. But of course, the big one is Star Wars. Every single one of the Star Wars movies, ILM has been involved, and not only involved, basically, ILM was born in order to cater Star Wars. George Lucas couldn't find a studio that was good enough to portray his idea of this space opera in the late 70s. So what did he do? He just created a company to create the effects. And most recently, well, of course, like all 9 movies of Star Wars, the amazing originals, the very highly criticized prequels, and the new 3 ones. And of course, The Mandalorian, something that everybody's talking about. Baby Yoda, we know, he's cute, yes. And the first TV show in the Star Wars universe, like real people TV show in the Star Wars universe. And that you can see on Disney Plus. And that I had the fortune to be a part of in season 1 a year ago. Let me also tell you a little bit, when I started as a production assistant, and my first project was Aquaman, an amazing, amazing project. Yes, the movie, maybe it's, I don't know, right? Like the movie per se, but let me tell you, one of the biggest challenges was all the hair. If you saw Aquaman, let me break a little bit the fourth wall and the movie magic. All the hair that you see on the water is CG. And that was one of the biggest problems to solve in the movie, just because you have to meet the artist expectations of making it look real, and also meet the client's expectations of, yeah, it has to look real, but don't mess with the artist's face. Like those that have long hair. I used to have long hair when I was younger. When you go swimming, it goes like all over your face. Well, imagine Aquaman with the hair on his face trying to give a line. So no. My second project was Aladdin. And yeah, also one of these Disney movies that they are doing these remakes with real people. And it's not because I worked on it, not at all. I do think it's probably the funniest and the most fun. I think Will Smith did a great job as the genie. If you don't compare him to Robin Williams. I was also a PA here, but I got my first opportunity to coordinate the process of 3D conversion. You know, nowadays, every single big budget movie has to have a 3D release. And that was challenging. Again, me being repetitive. I didn't know how the process was, but what did I do? Just ask all the questions. And after that, I got my first opportunity as a full coordinator on The Mandalorian. I coordinated the animation team, the generalist team, which in ILM they do environments, the FX team, which in ILM they do all the particle simulations, fire, and water, and also the compositing team, which is a team that puts everything together, like the end of the pipeline. It sounds like a lot, but we had, on every department, we have a very small team, which gave me the opportunity to start implementing a little bit of what I learned at the CDM based on Scrum, because I could build smaller multidisciplinary teams in order to iterate on a single shot. And today, well, I started a year ago, but we've been working on the new Space Jam movie, Space Jam: A New Legacy, with LeBron James and Bugs Bunny. So yeah, and well, yeah, I've commented about the Mandalorian, and just to talk a little bit about what might be in the future, I'm interested in working with Stagecraft, this technology that involves Unreal Engine in order to create environments on set, realistic environments. And let me tell you, when I was working on The Mandalorian, it saved a lot of time. So I think this is the future of filmmaking. It's gonna reduce a lot of costs, and it's gonna, yeah, costs in like traveling and also post-production for visual effects. Very exciting. So I might shift a little bit and go in production on set in the future. Not sure yet, but I'm pretty excited about like being a part of this relatively new technology. They use, as I said, Unreal Engine to show rendered environments. And the camera is kind of connected to a VR type of camera. So wherever the camera goes, it gives the illusion on the environment of parallax, of movement, and so on and so forth. So very exciting. Now, we're going to the conclusion of today's chat. Let's talk about the discoveries I had at the CDM and also in my so far 4-year journey, both CDM and ILM. So the first discovery I want to share is that working at the visual effects industry, well, we know that Scrum and the role of a Scrum Master, it's more related to technology. It's more related to software development, video games, and not very much in the visual effects industry. And of course, my very first approach as a production assistant was not to start pitching ideas. First, I started listening and seeing what the problems in the studio were, right? Once I figured that out, then I started thinking of how to implement what I learned at the CDM. The main thing here is that in the real world, it's a little bit more challenging to implement these things because there's a lot at risk. There's budget, there's a lot of approval processes that you have to go through in order to make like significant changes. So my first discovery, looking back, was that the CDM was the perfect laboratory. It was the perfect place to implement whatever I wanted to implement and fail in a safe environment. So I would encourage you to try to not focus on the final product of your projects now that you're on the verge of jumping into your second term. The final products are not, they may look shiny and attractive, but the whole point of the CDM journey is the journey itself, not the product. So I would encourage you to use the CDM as a laboratory, experiment. Whatever you're interested in implementing and learning, pitch it, try it. It's a safe environment to fail. The whole point of the CDM is not delivering the perfect pen to solve a problem. It's your journey to arrive to the perfect pen or your perfect product. This gets linked to the second discovery, which is I learned how to kill my babies. I know it sounds awful, but I come from a creative background, and one of the most challenging things was to let go of my ideas, you know? Because in our heads, ideas might sound terrific and fantastic, but in the end, they're for somebody else, at least in whatever industry we go, right? At least as professionals. Those ideas might sound great, but then they might not work quite well in the real world. And as in a small experience, nowadays, I'm constantly trying to figure out new processes and how to help my team to achieve more productivity or better communication. And what I do is I show them my tool set and I start implementing tools. But then I always tell them, these tools are not made of metal or something rigid. They are made of clay. So I just present them, we use them, but we can adapt them. Adapt them to be a shape that better suits the team. So the whole point is we have to let go of our ideas. If I cannot be rigid and say, let's use this process always. I have to let go of the ideas after I have seen that they don't quite work. And I also talked about adaptability. It's important to be adaptive. Every single project is different. Every single team is different. Different personalities, different time. And I think this situation is a clear example of it. Humanity has had to adapt to this new reality for the time being. And we have been solving problems of how to keep the economy going, jobs, and execute whatever we are executing through this new reality. And I think the CDM students have an advantage here because that's one of the biggest takeaways from the CDM. Adapt. Adapt processes. Adapt yourself. Another one is from the Agile Manifesto. People over processes. Adapt the processes to the people, not adapt the team to the processes. Some processes might work perfect with one team, but then the next one has a different client, has a different team configuration, has a different, the product is different. So we have to always adapt. We cannot use cookie cutter processes, especially on the visual effects industry. Every 6 months or 1 year, depending on the length of the production, I get a totally different team, a different production team, and a different team to coordinate. So believe me, the visual effects industry is a great example of how we have to adapt constantly and not use cookie cutter processes. And last but not least, write your own story. Nowadays, one of the things that drive my objectives and my professional objectives in life is how is it going to add to my professional story? That's why I'm grateful. I've had very challenging projects, big ones. Aladdin, big project. Aquaman, big project. The Mandalorian, the first TV series of the Star Wars universe. So it was like Lucasfilm's little baby. And now Space Jam 2, we have all sorts of challenges. And I'm grateful for that, because whenever I think about my story, it sounds a little bit better when I tell it to myself, like, well, we had all these problems and we solved them this way. And in spite of the situation, in spite of the circumstances, we managed to deliver a quality product rather than have a slow and easy project. So think about your story. And yeah, looking back 15 years ago, if you remember at the beginning, I asked you all to think, where were you 15 years ago? One of my biggest discoveries was also that it's not until we look back and see where we're at now and compare where we were some time ago that we realize how far we have gone. Because we're so immersed in whatever we're doing now that we don't realize how special this moment is. And that happens to me all the time. I sometimes don't dimension that 15 years ago, I was sitting at a movie theater wondering how would it be to be part of the film industry? And today, I know how it feels. So I think it's very important to do this kind of like looking back and see how long we have been walking and where are we now. But at the same time, I believe that dreams can come true, of course. But after they do, what's next? So look at the past, see how long have you gone, but also once you realize you are where you want to be, look at the future. And ask all the questions. I think I'm known in ILM as a question asker. All right, thank you very much.
That is an amazing way to segue into questions. So I do want to take some advantage of your time for a few Q&A from anyone in the group that may have it. We have the chat window, or you can pop on with a question as well. But I mean, I love how you the dreams can come true. You're technically working for a Disney company. I guess that's kind of motto, like, right? And you look back and you see Star Wars, and that's where you're at right now. So it's there's so many great tidbits of advice you've touched on here too, because you're right. It's the journey, not the destination. I mean, you know, that is what the MDM experience is really helping to find your way, where you're fit. Take the advantage of learning, not only from the faculty or, the staff that are around you, but the peers in the alumni network. So I loved how you referenced Al Sonoy, C3, right? So Al is not only another successful alumni in his own right. He's been back to supervise some projects and mentor and guide, and he's actually now engaged with Kristen Pilling and I about how can we deepen our alumni network and some of the workshops. He wants to keep giving back, right? So it's amazing. But anyway, anyone on the call have a question for Lalo?
Sure.
Yeah.
There we go.
Hey, hi. Yeah, lovely hearing your chat. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned possibly moving into more of the virtual production side with virtual walls and Mandalorian. So when in that process, do you find it pretty easy inside ILM to move around between different departments, or how do you approach moving to a different department?
ILM is a big company, and they have something that they call talent managers. I think it's like an industry standard, but we have a talent manager for production, and they are in constant touch and available to answer questions and for feedback and stuff like that. And basically, that's the way we usually state our interest on something else. And yeah, they do whatever they can in order to accommodate your career. Like basically, they are your career warriors. And yeah, uh, it's good to have a good relationship with them. Precisely, like probably 6 months ago, my talent manager touched base with me, and they usually give like some news of what's new on the company and stuff. And she said that probably there will be some opportunities on Stagecraft. And well, I just stated my interest, and yeah, like they actually listen. But at the same time, uh, positions are limited, right? So yeah, it's also networking. Like you will never stop networking. So it's like constantly being in touch and constantly, it's not about like your work, of course, will talk about you, but again, asking all the questions. Like I'm known as the question asker at ILM, not only because I ask how things are done, but I'm bugging everybody with questions: production, artists, supervisors, everybody, right? It's kind of like a way of showing interest and doing a little bit of networking. So yeah, I don't know if that covered the question.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Oh.
I have another question. So you mentioned earlier that, when you were going to career fairs and everything, that you didn't necessarily have the VFX experience. So I just wanted to ask, like, how did you approach your transition as an entry-level assistant? Like, how was the transition like? Was it difficult? Like, what advice would you give to someone who might not have the VFX experience but would love to consider your path?
Well, my first and biggest advice would be, don't be afraid of taking a step back. It's a cheesy phrase, but sometimes in order to go forward, you have to take like 2 or 3 steps back, which is what I did. Like one of my last jobs in Mexico was a brand manager. I was responsible, like a team of 6-7 people. I was responsible for a budget, for a brand and everything. So you would think, okay, well, you're up here, right? Like on the organizational level. And then I moved to Vancouver, went through the CDM. And to be honest, one of the first answers I got from visual effects recruiters was, you have to be a runner. You know what a runner is? A runner is, people that actually run to go get coffees, people that actually go and deliver like tapes, I'm giving out my age. I don't know, like HDDs or whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But basically an errand person, right? But that's like the starting point in the industry. And I was willing to do it. And one of my interviews at one of the visual effects studios that I had, the recruiter told me like, hey, so you have a lot of experience. Are you sure you want to apply to a runner position? Because you'll get tired. And I just said, you know what? Like, I'm eager to find a job in Vancouver. I'm eager to get into the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do whatever it takes. So I think that's the first advice and most important. Don't fear like taking a couple steps back in order to launch yourself launch yourself forward. And actually, like right now, I think like my career in visual effects has gone through that path, and I have never pressured anybody to be promoted. And I've like the satisfaction is higher, because I've earned it with a lot of work, hard work, and also with, like, to be honest, the CDM people, they stand out. And that's why I'm like super proud about the CDM. Yeah, believe it or not, we stand out there, and the industry need us. That. It's.
You touched on some great things, and I'm going to try to get into some very quick questions before we get to the end of this. But and you're also not the only MDMer who's made it into ILM. I remember Maria was in there with you. Yeah. So
she's now a production manager at Sony. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's but anyway, that idea of the foot in the door or being humble to kind of get in. The idea is that you can have a hockey stick kind of growth by just get in, prove that you're bringing value, and your career trajectory will go high. But you need to get your start, get recognized, right? So that was great. We did talk a little bit about working on set. It looks like Tom had a specific question about what do you see yourself doing around the Unreal virtual production set? Super short.
Oh, well, yeah, coordinating. There's a lot of work there, coordinating the people that build the environments that get put on the screens. And also you coordinate some of that stuff on set.
Awesome. So, and then Ulysses had a question in chat just on thinking about, you know, a lot of the work is being done remote now. Do you see it sort of returning to sort of the regular way, or is there going to be sort of, you know, you see it returning to the traditional way once the pandemic ends?
Well, there's a lot of challenges with that because I think the world is going to change, and we're proving the world that working from home is completely doable.
Yeah.
But from a personal perspective, I do miss the interaction with teams, like the physical interaction, the presence. And of course, the CDM let me all this post-it notes. I miss that.
That's right. Oh yeah.
So yeah, I hope it changes, but I hope we go back to using
awesome.
post-it.
Adlin, you just said I have a question. I can't go beyond that. What's the question? Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Lalo, for the information session. I really enjoyed the Mandalorian so far. So yeah, my first question is, as the production manager, how do you decide which animation, which is in CGI or using practical effects? Because I've seen like the latest movies have a mixed approach of these animation techniques. And then the second one is, do you have any like connection from the ILM X Lab? Because I think I'm really interested in doing a lot of VR stuff. Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually 2 questions, but yeah.
Very good questions. Unfortunately, that's way above my pay grade. Like, we don't make the decision of if we use CG or practical. But like the question, like the answer I can give you, it depends on the budget, and it depends a lot on the director. The director usually is the one that decides. Just because, like for instance, Jon Favreau on The Mandalorian, they wanted to go back to the old look of Star Wars, right? So that's why they chose to use more practical effects with Baby Yoda and all that stuff, right? But yeah, I would say it's middle point between budget and what the director wants. And what was the other question? Oh, X-Lab. Unfortunately, there's no X-Lab work in Vancouver yet. One of my ideas is eventually see if they can bring some projects from X-Lab, because they are doing pretty cool stuff. And I don't see it that far away. Yeah, but yeah, unfortunately for the time being, they don't. You would have to move to San Francisco.
I see. All right. Yeah, thanks for answering the question.
You never know. So with that, I think what we're going to do is wrap the session, because again, as promised, I got to get this wrapped before 6 for those who may have class. But Lalo, again, can't thank you enough. Super appreciate the time, the support, the anchor of our alumni speaker series for the term. You did exceptionally well, as expected of you. So I can't thank you enough. We'll do it properly with a real toast or beverage, or I think you gave me that poster at our charity poker night the last time we had an in-person one. That's right. I'm looking forward to getting back to the face-to-face when we can do it. But until then, digital, we have the tools, technologies, let's work with it. Everyone on the call, thank you. Lalo, thank you so much. I hope Dallas Stars get better, or not the Stars, the Cowboys do better than what they do.
Me too, man.
Yeah, I'll give you 1 or 2 more wins. That's okay. And then the Seahawks can win the rest and I'll be happy. So anyway, enough football talk. Congrats on having your PlayStation 5 before me. Jealous of you on that. And super proud of you. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. This is the way. This is the way.
Thank you so much.